Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the UN warship Indomitable, watching the stars through the thick glass windows. His hands were folded behind his back, and his face showed the calm look of a man who had seen many battles. The ship moved quietly through space, its engines humming softly. "Captain," said Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin from her station, "we have a message coming in. It's from Earth Command." "Put it on the main screen," Dae-ho said. The screen flickered, and Admiral Kim Tae-sung appeared. The old admiral looked excited, which was strange. Tae-sung never got excited about anything. "Dae-ho," the admiral said, "get back to Earth as fast as you can. Something big has happened. Something that will change everything for humanity." 3 days later, Dae-ho sat in a meeting room deep inside Earth Command. Around the table were the most important people in human space. Admiral Kim sat at the head of the table. Next to him was Ambassador Park Sora, a smart woman who had spent years talking to alien races. Dr. Choi Min-ji was there too, the best expert on alien cultures that Earth had. "Show him the message," Admiral Kim said. A hologram appeared above the table. It showed a being that looked like a tall, thin human, but with blue skin and 4 arms. Its voice was musical and soft. "Greetings, people of Earth," the being said. "I am Counselor Vex Therion, speaking for the Galactic Council. For many years we have watched your species. We have seen your growth, your strength, and your courage. Now, we believe you are ready to join us as equals among the stars." Dae-ho raised his eyebrows. The Galactic Council was made up of 12 alien races that had ruled space for thousands of years. They had never offered friendship to any young race before. The message continued. "We invite you to a grand ceremony on the neutral world of Valdris Prime. There we will sign a peace pact that will bring your people into our great alliance. You will have our protection, our technology, and our friendship. The ceremony will take place in 3 weeks' time." The hologram paused, and Therion smiled. "To show good faith, we ask that your ships come with minimal weapons. This ceremony is about peace, not war. We look forward to welcoming humanity into the galactic community." The message ended, and the room was quiet. "This is incredible," said Ambassador Park. "They're offering us everything we've dreamed of. Protection from hostile races, access to their technology, trade agreements that could make Earth rich beyond imagination." Dr. Choi nodded. "The cultural significance is enormous. No young species has ever been invited to join the Council as equals. Usually they make races prove themselves for centuries." Admiral Kim looked pleased. "The politicians are already planning the biggest celebration in human history. This could end our isolation forever." Dae-ho said nothing. He stared at the spot where the hologram had been, his mind working. "What do you think, Captain?" Admiral Kim asked. "Something feels wrong," Dae-ho said slowly. "Why now? What changed? We've had contact with council races for only 5 years. That's nothing to them." Ambassador Park frowned. "Captain, with respect, you're a military man. You see threats everywhere. This is diplomacy, not warfare." "Maybe," Dae-ho said, "but I've been fighting pirates and hostile aliens for 15 years. I know when something smells like a trap." Dr. Choi leaned forward. "What specifically concerns you?" Dae-ho pulled up a star map. "Look at the location. Valdris Prime is deep in Council space, hundreds of light years from the nearest human outpost. If something goes wrong, we'd be completely alone." "That's exactly why they chose it," Park said. "It's neutral ground. No one can claim advantage there." "And the timeline?" Dae-ho continued. 3 weeks? For something this important? Normally, diplomatic meetings take months to plan." "They want to move quickly," Admiral Kim said. "The Council has enemies. The longer they wait, the more chance for interference." Dae-ho shook his head. "And this request about minimal weapons, that bothers me most of all." "It's a gesture of trust," Park insisted. "They're showing that this is about peace. Or they're making sure we can't fight back," Dae-ho said quietly. The room fell silent. Dr. Choi looked thoughtful. "Captain, do you have evidence for these concerns?" "No," Dae-ho admitted. "Just instinct. And instinct has kept me alive for a long time." Admiral Kim sighed. Daeho, I understand your caution, but we can't let fear stop us from taking this opportunity. The Council could crush us easily if they wanted to. They don't need tricks, unless they want something specific from us, Daeho said. Something they can't get by force. The meeting went on for hours. In the end, the decision was made. Earth would send a delegation to Valdris Prime. Ambassador Park would lead the diplomatic team. Captain Yoon Sang-woo would command the escort ships. Everything would be official and proper. But Admiral Kim pulled Daeho aside after the others left. I want you to know, the Admiral said quietly, that your concerns haven't fallen on deaf ears. What are you thinking? Daeho looked at the star map again. I'm thinking that if I were planning an ambush, this is exactly how I'd do it. Isolated location, rushed timeline, victims who can't fight back. And if you were preparing for such an ambush, I'd have backup nearby, close enough to help, far enough away to avoid detection. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. The official fleet will consist of 3 diplomatic ships and 2 escort frigates. Minimal weapons just as requested. And the unofficial fleet? That would be theoretical, of course. A battle group that happened to be conducting training exercises in a nearby system, led by an experienced captain who doesn't trust easily. Daeho smiled for the first time that day. Theoretical exercises, I understand. 2 weeks later, Daeho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable again. This time he wasn't alone. Around his ship were 12 other vessels, battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. The best of Earth's fleet, crewed by veterans who had fought pirates, hostile aliens, and worse. Dr. Choi sat at a station nearby studying every piece of information about the Council they could find. Her work had already found several troubling details. Captain, she said, I've been analyzing the language patterns in their communications. There are subtle inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? They use words that suggest deception, small things but consistent. In their language, there are different ways to say ceremony depending on whether it's genuine or performative. They consistently use the performative form. Daeho nodded. What else? The historical records are strange too. Several young races have vanished shortly after making contact with the Council. The official explanation is always that they destroyed themselves in wars or accidents, but the timing is suspicious. Lieutenant Nam Hyejin looked up from her station. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Captain Yoon's ship. They've reached Valdris Prime. Put it through, Daeho said. Captain Yoon appeared on screen. He looked tense. The planet is beautiful, he said. Crystal cities, perfect atmosphere, but something's wrong. Explain. There are too many ships, in orbit, way more than needed for a ceremony. And they're not ceremonial vessels. I'm seeing heavy cruisers, battle platforms, ships designed for war, not peace. Dr. Choi leaned forward. How are the Council representatives behaving? Polite but controlling, Yoon said. They're escorting our people everywhere. They say it's for protection, but it feels more like supervision. And they've set up some kind of interference field that's making our communications spotty, Daeho felt his suspicions growing stronger. Maintain your position and keep watching. We'll be there in 18 hours. After the transmission ended, Dr. Choi spoke up. Captain, I've found something else. In the old records, there's a pattern. Every time the Council offers a peace treaty, they use the same words, the same ceremony structure. It's like they're following a script. A script for what? I don't know yet. But it's not a script for making allies. It's a script for something else entirely. Daeho stared out at the stars. Somewhere ahead was Valdris Prime, where his fellow humans were attending. What might be the most important ceremony in human history, or it might be something much darker. All ships, he said into his communicator. Maintain stealth mode. Prepare for combat operations. We're going to find out what the Council really wants with humanity. The fleet moved forward through the darkness, weapons ready, sensors searching. Behind them, Earth waited for news of humanity's bright future among the stars. Ahead lay answers that might change everything humanity thought they knew about the galaxy. And in the space between, Captain Lee, Daeho prepared for the possibility that peace might only come through war. The crystalline amphitheater on Valdris Prime was the most beautiful thing Ambassador Park Sora had ever seen. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that changed colors with the light. Thousands of seats rose in perfect circles, around a central stage where 12 different alien species sat at a grand table. Park walked slowly down the main aisle, surrounded by her human delegation. The aliens watched them with interest, but something in their stares made her uncomfortable. It felt less like curiosity and more like examination. Counselor Vex Therian stood as the humans approached. He was even taller in person, nearly 8 feet high, with skin that shifted between blue and purple. His forearms moved in graceful gestures as he spoke. "Welcome, children of Earth," Therian said. His voice echoed strangely in the crystal chamber. "You honor us with your presence. Please take your places so we may begin this historic ceremony." Park bowed politely and took her seat at the table. Around her, she could see representatives from the 12 council races. There were the lizard-like Zelkari with their golden scales. The Morthan looked like giant spiders made of metal. The Vask were clouds of gas held together by energy fields. Each race was ancient beyond human understanding. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. "The Peace Pact ceremony has been performed for 3,000 years, Therian said. It represents the highest honor the Council can bestow. Today, humanity joins the great family of civilized species." The ceremony began with speeches from each council member. They talked about peace, cooperation, and the bright future ahead. Park found herself relaxing despite her earlier concerns. These beings seemed genuinely interested in helping humanity. But as the hours passed, small things began to bother her. The human delegation had been given quarters in a separate building, far from the main complex. When she asked why, the council representatives said it was for their comfort and privacy. But Park noticed that council security guards were always nearby, watching. Their communication equipment kept having problems. Every time they tried to send a message to Earth or to Captain Yoon's ships, something went wrong. The council technicians apologized and promised to fix it, but the problems continued. And the ceremony itself felt strange. The speeches were beautiful, but they all sounded the same, like the speakers were reading from the same script, just changing a few words here and there. Captain Yoon Sang-woo stood on the bridge of his frigate Defiant, orbiting high above Valdris Prime. Through his telescope, he could see the Crystal City, where the ceremony was taking place. It looked peaceful enough, but his sensors were telling a different story. "Lieutenant Nam," he said to his communications officer, "what are you picking up from the planet's surface?" Lieutenant Nam Hyejin frowned at her screens. "It's strange, sir. There are massive energy readings coming from underground installations all around the planet, much more power than you'd need for a ceremony." "What kind of energy?" "Hard to tell through all the interference, but it looks like weapon systems. Big ones." Yoon felt his stomach tighten. "Any word from Ambassador Park?" "Nothing for 6 hours. Sir, every time we try to contact them, we get static or system failures." Yoon looked out at the other ships in orbit. There were indeed many more than necessary for a peace ceremony. Council vessels surrounded the human ships in what looked like a protective formation, but could just as easily be a trap. "Keep monitoring everything," Yoon ordered, "and prepare a message torpedo. If something goes wrong, we need to get word to Captain Daeho." Back in the amphitheater, Dr. Choi Minji sat quietly in the observer section, but her mind was racing. As a xenobiologist, she had studied alien cultures for years. Something about this ceremony was setting off every alarm in her head. The problem was the behavior patterns. Each council species was acting exactly like they did in the historical records, down to specific gestures and phrases. But that was impossible. These were living beings, not actors in a play. There should be some variation, some personality, differences, unless they were following a very specific script for a very specific purpose. During a break in the ceremony, Dr. Choi managed to access one of the crystal walls. The living crystal stored information like a computer, and she had learned to read basic council data formats. What she found made her blood run cold. The crystal contained records going back thousands of years. records of other ceremonies exactly like this one. 17 different species had sat where humans now sat. 17 species that had accepted peace pacts with the Council, and according to the records, all 17 species were now extinct. The files were written in an ancient Council dialect, but Dr. Choi could understand enough to see the pattern. Each species had been invited to a grand ceremony. Each had been offered the same treaty, the same benefits, the same future, and each had vanished within months of signing. Dr. Choi tried to access more files, but the crystal suddenly went dark. A Council security guard appeared beside her. "There a problem?" the guard asked. Its voice was polite, but there was no mistaking the threat. "Just admiring the beautiful architecture," Dr. Choi said carefully. The guard studied her for a long moment, then moved away. But Dr. Choi noticed that from then on, there was always a guard nearby, watching her every move. As the ceremony continued into its third day, Ambassador Park became more and more uneasy. The treaty they were being asked to sign was hundreds of pages long, full of complex legal language. Every time she asked to review a section more carefully, the Council representatives urged her to trust them. "These are standard clauses," Councillor Therian said when Park questioned a particular section. "Every species signs the same agreement. It has worked perfectly for thousands of years." But when Park tried to ask what had happened to previous species who had signed, she got vague answers about evolution beyond physical existence and transcendence to higher planes. The final ceremony was scheduled for the next day. That night, Park lay in her quarters, unable to sleep. Something was deeply wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on what. A soft knock at her door made her sit up. Dr. Choi slipped inside, looking frightened. "We need to talk," Dr. Choi whispered. "But not here. They're listening to everything." They went to the bathroom and turned on the water to mask their voices. "I found records in the crystal storage," Dr. Choi said quietly. 17 species have signed this exact same treaty. All of them are gone now. Park felt her heart skip. Gone how? The records aren't clear, but there are references to resource extraction, genetic sampling, and population management. Whatever happens after species sign this treaty, it's not what they promise. "We have to warn Earth," Park said. "How?" "They've cut off all our communications, and tomorrow they expect us to sign." Park thought quickly. "Captain Yoon is still in orbit, if we can get a message to him somehow." But even as she said it, she realized how impossible it would be. The Council was watching their every move. High above the planet, Captain Yoon was having problems of his own. Council ships had been moving closer to the human vessels all day, always with polite excuses about better defensive positioning and coordinating patrol routes. But the end result was that the human ships were now completely surrounded. "Sir," Lieutenant Nam reported, "I'm detecting some kind of scanning beams from the Council ships. They're analyzing our hull composition, weapon systems, everything." "Scanning. For what?" "Unknown, but they're being very thorough." Yoon made a decision. "Prepare to send a priority message to Captain Daeho. Tell him we have a problem here." But when they tried to transmit, their communications array went dead. "Equipment failure," a Council representative explained when Yoon complained. "These things happen in deep space. Our technicians will repair it immediately." But hours passed and the repairs never came. In the amphitheater, the final ceremony began. Councillor Therian stood before the assembled crowd, holding an ornate document covered in alien writing. "Today," he announced, "humanity takes its place among the stars. Ambassador Park, if you would please sign the Peace Pact, we can begin your species' glorious future." Park stared at the document. Every instinct she had was screaming at her not to sign. But she was alone, surrounded by beings who could destroy humanity with ease. If she refused, what would happen to Earth? She reached for the signing stylus, her hand shaking slightly. That was when the alarms began to sound. All around the amphitheater, warning lights flashed red. Council representatives looked confused and alarmed. Therion's calm expression cracked. For the first time. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. A junior council member rushed to his side and whispered something that made Therion's face change color. "Impossible," Therion said. "You're certain?" The junior member nodded frantically. Therion turned back to the humans, and for the first time Park saw something ugly in his expression, something that had been hidden behind the diplomatic mask. "It seems," Therion said slowly, "that your species has been more prepared than we anticipated." Through the crystal walls of the amphitheater, Park could see flashes of light in the sky above. Ships were moving, weapons were charging, and the peaceful ceremony was about to become something very different. Captain Lee Dae-ho had arrived. Dr. Choi Min-ji pressed herself against the crystal wall of the amphitheater as chaos erupted around her. The alarms were deafening, and council representatives were running in all directions. But she had found something that made her forget about the danger. The crystal wall had cracked when the alarm started, and data was spilling out like water from a broken dam. Ancient files, hidden records, secrets that the council had kept for thousands of years. "Computer," she whispered to her translation device. "Emergency download protocol. Save everything." The files were enormous. Dr. Choi's device struggled to process the alien language, but slowly, terrifying truths began to emerge. The Galactic Council wasn't what they claimed to be. They weren't peaceful guardians of civilization. They were predators. The record showed their true history. For over 5,000 years, the Council had roamed the galaxy, finding young species that showed promise. They would study these species carefully, learning everything about their biology, psychology, and technology. Then came the invitation, the grand ceremony, the peace pact. But the treaty wasn't about peace. It was about ownership. Species that signed the pact became property of the Council. Their populations were moved to education centers that were actually laboratories. Their genetic material was harvested and used to improve Council biology. Their technology was absorbed and adapted. The 17 extinct species hadn't destroyed themselves. They had been consumed. Dr. Choi found detailed files on each one. The records were clinical, cold, describing the victims like they were experimental subjects rather than living beings. But the files on humanity were different. Larger. More detailed. More excited. "Exceptional adaptive capabilities," read one report. "Rapid technological advancement despite recent emergence. Aggressive survival instincts combined with tool-making intelligence. Genetic structure highly compatible with enhancement protocols." Another file made her stomach turn. "Recommended harvest methodology. Complete population transfer to Laboratory Complex 7. Estimated processing time, 6 months. Estimated genetic yield, sufficient for 3,000 enhancement cycles." They weren't just planning to destroy humanity. They were planning to turn humans into raw material for improving themselves. "Dr. Choi." Ambassador Park's voice cut through the chaos. "We need to go. Now." Dr. Choi grabbed her device and ran toward Park. Around them, Council security guards were moving with military precision, no longer bothering to pretend this was a peaceful ceremony. "What's happening?" Park shouted over the alarms. "This was never about peace," Dr. Choi yelled back. "They're going to harvest us. All of us. The entire human race." They reached the main exit, but Council guards blocked their way. The guards weren't being polite anymore. They held weapons that hummed with deadly energy. "Ambassador Park," one guard said in a flat voice, "please return to your quarters. For your safety." "Safety from what?" Park demanded. The guard's expression didn't change. "From the consequences of your species' poor choices." In orbit above Veldris Prime, Captain Lee Dae-ho watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Council had expected helpless victims, but they had gotten something very different. "Report," Dae-ho ordered. 12 Council heavy cruisers, 4 battle platforms, and approximately 30 smaller vessels, reported his tactical officer. They were positioned to prevent any escape from the planet. Were positioned? 8 of the cruisers are now disabled or destroyed. Our micro-jump tactics caught them completely off guard. They can't adjust to our movement patterns. Deho nodded. The council ships were powerful, but they fought like predators attacking prey. They used overwhelming force against helpless enemies. They had never learned to fight against equally dangerous opponents. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire history. Every human ship captain thought like a hunter facing other hunters. What about Captain Yoon's ships? Freed from their containment formation. Captain Yoon reports that council jamming has stopped and he's preparing to extract the diplomatic team. Good. And the planet's surface? Multiple energy buildups detected. Looks like they're preparing some kind of large-scale weapon system. Dr. Choi's stolen data was already being transmitted to the fleet. As the translation programs worked through the files, the true scope of the Council's plan became clear. Valdris Prime wasn't just a ceremonial site. It was a processing center. The beautiful Crystal City was built on top of vast underground complexes designed for one purpose: breaking down captured species and turning them into useful components. The planet's energy systems weren't for defense. They were for powering massive stasis fields that could freeze entire populations in place while the processing began. They were going to do this to Earth, whispered Commander Shinna Riem as she read the files. The whole planet. Everyone. Daiho's face was stone. Not while I'm breathing. Tactical, target those underground installations. I want them gone. Sir, the diplomatic team is still down there. Then we better get them out fast. On the planet's surface, Major Kwon Dong-min led his Special Forces team through the Crystal City's twisting streets. They had infiltrated during the first wave of orbital bombardment, using stolen Council transport codes to slip past the defenses. The city was in chaos. Council forces were trying to activate their processing systems while dealing with human attacks from orbit. Security teams ran in all directions, no longer bothering to maintain their peaceful facade. Team 2 report. Kwon spoke into his communicator. We've reached the human quarters, came the reply. Heavy resistance, but we're through. Kwon's team reached the amphitheater just as council guards were trying to force the human delegation into transport vehicles. The vehicles were heading toward the underground complexes. Light them up, Kwon ordered. The special forces opened fire with weapons designed specifically for fighting alien technology. The council guards' energy shields flickered and failed under the assault. Dr. Choi ran toward the soldiers. Her translation, device still recording everything. Major, I have proof. Records of everything they've done. Save it for later, Doctor, Kwon said, helping her into their transport. Right now, we need to get out of here before they activate their final protocol. What? Final protocol? Major Kwon's expression was grim. According to the files you found, if they can't capture a species intact, they have a backup plan. They destroy the entire homeworld and salvage what they can from the debris. Ambassador Park felt her blood turn to ice. Earth? Council fleets are already moving toward your solar system, a familiar voice said behind them. They turned to see Counselor Vex Therion approaching, flanked by heavily armed guards, but he wasn't trying to capture them anymore. He looked defeated. You have surprised us humans, Therion said. We did not expect resistance. No species has ever prepared for our methods before. Because you always made sure they couldn't, Dr. Choi said angrily. You isolated them, cut off their communications, made them helpless. Therion nodded. It has always worked, until now. What do you want? Ambassador Park demanded. To make you an offer, Therion said. Surrender now, and we will make your species end quick. Continue to resist, and we will ensure that every human dies slowly and painfully. Major Kwon raised his weapon. Here's our counteroffer, but Therion held up one hand. Wait. You should know that this battle means nothing. We have fleets throughout the galaxy. Even if you destroy everything here, we will still eliminate your species. The only question is how much suffering you wish to endure first. Dr. Choi stepped forward. You're wrong about something important. What? You think we're prey. But we're not. We're predators. And predators don't give up just because the hunt gets difficult. Therion's expression changed. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Your species has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, Dr. Choi continued. You've grown soft. You've forgotten what real competition looks like. But humans, we've been competing with each other since we first picked up sticks and stones. Every advance we've made, every technology we've developed, every strategy we've learned, it's all come from fighting beings just as smart and dangerous as ourselves. She pulled up her translation device and showed him the screen. You want to know why we detected your trap? Because we've set the same kinds of traps on each other for thousands of years. You want to know why our ships are winning in space? Because we've been building ships to fight other ships just as advanced as our own. Therion stared at the device, reading the human military history that Dr. Choi had loaded into it. This is impossible, he whispered. No species fights this, much against itself. Most species don't survive long enough to reach the stars, Dr. Choi said. The ones that do have learned to cooperate. But humans? We learn to cooperate and compete at the same time. We're not just another prey species for you to harvest. We're your replacement. The sound of explosions echoed from the underground installations. Captain Daeho's bombardment was tearing apart the processing facilities that had consumed 17 civilizations. Therion looked around at his crumbling empire, at the human soldiers who had appeared from nowhere, at the ships in orbit that were dismantling his fleets with tactics he had never imagined. What do you want from us? He asked quietly. Major Quan answered for all of them. Justice, for every species you've destroyed. The battle for Valdris Prime had become a nightmare for the Council forces. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display as another Council cruiser exploded under concentrated human fire. Enemy response patterns? He asked his tactical officer. Completely predictable, sir, Lieutenant Park Han-sol reported. They're using the same formations they've used for thousands of years. They position for overwhelming firepower against stationary targets, but they can't adapt when we keep moving. Dae-ho nodded. The Council ships were powerful, but they fought like a species that had never faced real resistance. Their tactics assumed the enemy would stay in one place and die quietly. Human ships did not stay in one place. Micro jump in, 30 seconds, Dae-ho ordered. Target the command ship. All weapons maximum power. The Indomitable vanished from normal space and reappeared directly behind Counselor Therion's flagship. For a moment that lasted an eternity, the massive Council vessel hung helpless as human weapons charged. Fire, Dae-ho said quietly. The Council flagship shuddered under the assault. Its shields, designed to resist conventional attacks, collapsed, under weapons specifically built to fight enemies as advanced as humanity itself. Enemy vessel is disabled, reported the tactical officer. They're requesting surrender terms. Patch me through to their commander. The main screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. It looked like Therion, but older, with scars across its blue skin. I am Admiral Vex Corian, the alien said. I demand to know why you attack peaceful Council forces. Dae-ho smiled, but there was no humor in it. Peaceful? We know what you really are. We know about the 17 species you've destroyed. We know about your plans for humanity. Corian's expression changed. The diplomatic mask slipped away, revealing something cold and predatory underneath. You know nothing, Corian snarled. Your species is young and stupid. You think this small victory means something? We have fleets across the galaxy. We have weapons you cannot imagine. We will grind your pathetic civilization to dust. No, Dae-ho said calmly. You won't. And why is that primitive? Because you made a fundamental mistake. You assumed we were prey. Dae-ho gestured to his tactical display, which showed the positions of both fleets. Look at your formation. Perfect for overwhelming weaker opponents. Terrible for fighting equals. Look at your response times. You expect enemies to panic and make mistakes, but we don't panic. The tactical display zoomed out, showing the entire battle space. Council ships were scattered, trying to regroup against an enemy that refused to fight the way they expected. Your species has been the apex predator for so long that you've forgotten how to hunt real threats. Dae-ho continued. But humans have been fighting beings just as intelligent and dangerous as ourselves for our entire history. Every human commander on every one of my ships thinks like a predator hunting other predators. As if to prove his point, 3 human destroyers appeared from nowhere around a council battle platform. The platform's weapons were designed to engage targets at long range, but the human ships were already inside its defensive perimeter. The platform died in seconds. Impossible, Corian whispered. Your turn, Deho said. Surrender now and we'll treat your crews with the mercy you never showed others. Continue fighting and learn what it feels like to be prey. On the planet's surface, Major Quan Dongmin's special forces had fought their way deep into the underground processing facilities. What they found there would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Vast chambers filled with stasis pods, laboratories equipped with surgical tools designed for living subjects, storage areas filled with biological samples from species that no longer existed. Sir, called Sergeant Lee Young-ho from across the chamber. You need to see this. Quan approached a computer terminal that his sergeant had managed to activate. The screen showed a map of the galaxy with hundreds of red dots marking different systems. What am I looking at? Council processing centers, sir. Hundreds of them. Each one built to handle entire planetary populations. Quan felt sick. The scope of the Council's operation was beyond anything they had imagined. This wasn't just about humanity. This was a galaxy-spanning extermination program that had been running for thousands of years. Are any of them still active? According to this, 17 centers are currently processing species that were recruited in the last century. 17 species are being killed right now? Yes, sir. Quan made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Download everything. Every location, every facility, every piece of evidence. When we're done here, the galaxy is going to know the truth about the Council. Dr. Choi Minji worked frantically at another terminal, her translation program struggling to keep up with the flood of information she was discovering. Major, she called, I found something important. The Council's command structure. They're not just a military organization. They're a business. What kind of business? They sell the genetic material and technology they steal to other civilizations. There's a whole network of client species that buy Council products without knowing where they come from. Dr. Choi pulled up shipping records that showed the true scope of the operation. The Council wasn't just destroying species for their own benefit. They were selling the components to anyone willing to pay. Some of these clients, Dr. Choi said slowly, are species that consider themselves peaceful and enlightened. They're buying enhanced biology and advanced technology, never asking where it comes from. Can we contact them? I think we have to. If we can prove what the Council really is, some of these client species might help us stop them. Above ground, Ambassador Park Sora found herself in the strangest negotiation of her career. Councillor Therion sat across from her in what had once been a beautiful garden, but was now a crater-filled battlefield. Your species has impressive military capabilities, Therion said calmly. Perhaps we can reach an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Park asked. Join us willingly. Help us improve our methods and we will spare your homeworld. You can even keep some of your population as breeding stock. Park stared at him in disgust. You're offering to let some humans live as slaves. It is better than extinction. No, it really isn't. Therion seemed genuinely puzzled by her response. Your species will die anyway. We have allies throughout the galaxy. Even if you defeat our forces here, you cannot defeat everyone. Maybe not, Park said, but we can make sure that everyone knows what you really are. She held up Dr. Choi's translation device, which was still recording everything. Every conversation we've had, every file we've found, every piece of evidence of your crimes, it's all being broadcast to every species in the galaxy right now. Therion's face went pale. That is impossible. We control all communication networks. You control Council networks, but humans built our own. Park smiled as she watched Therion realize what was happening. Captain Deho's fleet wasn't just fighting a battle. They were transmitting everything they had learned to every corner of the galaxy. The truth about the Council was spreading faster than they could stop it. In the ship-to-ship battle above, Admiral Corian was learning what it meant to fight an enemy that refused to be victims. "Status report," he barked at his bridge crew. 60% of our fleet is destroyed or disabled, his tactical officer reported. The humans are using micro-jump technology in ways we've never seen. They appear, attack, and vanish before we can respond. How is that possible? They're not following any known tactical doctrine. Each ship acts independently, but they coordinate perfectly. It's like fighting a school of predatory fish instead of a proper military formation. Another Council ship exploded on the tactical display. "They're not just defeating us," the tactical officer continued. "They're studying us. Every attack is more precise than the last. They're learning our weaknesses in real time." Corian slammed his hand on his command chair. "Activate the planet killers. If we cannot have this system, we will deny it to them." But when his weapons officer tried to comply, nothing happened. "Sir, the planet killer systems are not responding." "Why not?" "The human infiltration teams have reached the control centers. They've taken over our most critical systems." On Corian's main screen, a new face appeared. It was Major Quan, speaking. From deep inside the planet's control center. "Admiral," Quan said politely, "I'm afraid your planet-killing days are over." "You cannot stop all of our fleets," Corian snarled. "We don't have to," Quan replied. "We just have to make sure the galaxy knows what you really are. After that, you'll find that being the apex predator isn't as easy when everyone knows you're coming." The Major's image was replaced by something that made Corian's blood freeze. It was a galaxy-wide broadcast showing the processing facilities, the stasis chambers, the evidence of thousands of years of genocide, and it was being transmitted on every frequency in every language to every inhabited system in the galaxy. "The age of the Council," Quan's voice said over the broadcast, "is over." Across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear of the mysterious Council for generations learned the truth. Client species that had unknowingly funded the genocide discovered what their money had bought. Civilizations that had considered themselves safe realized they were nothing more than future victims. 6 months after the Battle of Valdris Prime, Ambassador Park Sora stood before the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history. The Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Station could hold representatives from over 200 different civilizations, and today it was completely full. The station itself was a marvel of cooperation. Built in just 4 months by dozens of species working together, it represented something that had never existed before, a truly neutral meeting place where no single species held power over others. Park looked out at the crowd and marveled at how much had changed. 6 months ago, these species had been isolated from each other, kept apart by Council policies designed to prevent cooperation. Now they were working together to build a new kind of galactic civilization. "The evidence is clear," Park said into the microphone that translated her words into hundreds of languages. "The organization that called itself the Galactic Council was responsible for the systematic extermination of over 400 species across 5,000 years. The hall was silent except for the soft humming of the translation devices. Every being present had seen the broadcast from Valdris Prime. Every species had learned what the Council had really been, but seeing the evidence and deciding what to do about it were two different things. "The question before us today," Park continued, "is not whether the Council was guilty. The question is what we build to replace it." A delegate from the Epsilon Collective raised one of its tentacles. "Ambassador Park, your species has proven very effective at destroying Council forces. But what assurance do we have that humanity will not simply become the new oppressor?" It was a fair question. Human fleets had swept across the galaxy in the months following Valdris Prime, hunting down Council strongholds and liberation processing centers. The results had been spectacular. Over 50 installations destroyed, 17 species rescued from ongoing extermination, and the complete collapse of the Council's military power. But some species worried that humanity was simply replacing one predator with another. "A reasonable concern," Park acknowledged. "Let me address it by introducing someone who can speak to our intentions." The lights dimmed, and Admiral Kim Tae-sung appeared on the main screen via holographic transmission. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship was visible, along with crew members from a dozen different species. Representatives of the galaxy, Admiral Kim said, "I want you to see something." The view changed to show the bridge crew more clearly. Park smiled as she watched the delegates' reactions. The human admiral's tactical officer was a rescued Zelkari. His communications specialist was one of the spider-like Morthan. His engineering chief was a being from a species that had been declared extinct 50 years ago. "This is the crew of the human flagship Unity," Admiral Kim explained. "But as you can see, it's not really human anymore. It's galactic." The view expanded to show other ships in Kim's fleet. Each one had a mixed crew with humans working alongside beings they had rescued from Council facilities. "When we found survivors in the processing centers," Kim continued, "we didn't send them home to become someone else's problem. We offered them a choice. They could return to their homeworlds, or they could join us in making sure this never happens again." Dr. Choi Min-ji stepped forward at the podium. "Over 8,000 survivors have chosen to join the Free Species Protection Force. They're not serving under human command. They're serving alongside human partners in a truly integrated fleet." A delegate from the Crystalline Communion spoke up. "But humans still hold the highest command positions. How is this different from Council domination?" Captain Lee Daeho's voice came from another communication channel. "Because we are not trying to rule anyone. We're trying to protect everyone." His image appeared alongside Admiral Kim's. Behind him, the tactical display showed dozens of ships spread across multiple star systems. "Right now," Daeho explained, "human and allied fleets are patrolling trade routes, responding to distress calls, and hunting down the last Council holdouts. We're not building an empire. We're building a defense network." "And when that job is done?" asked another delegate. "What then?" "Then we go home," Daeho said simply. "We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We just wanted to live in it safely." Dr. Choi activated a holographic display that showed the new organizational structure they were proposing. The new Galactic Compact isn't based on any one species controlling others. It's based on voluntary cooperation between equals. The display showed how the system would work. Any species could join, but none could dominate. Decisions would be made by consensus, not force. The military arm, the Free Species Protection. Force would be multi-species and focused purely on defense. "How do we know you won't change your minds?" demanded a delegate from the Far Rim territories. "How do we know that humans won't decide they like power and refuse to give it up?" Park had been expecting this question. Because of who we are, she activated another display that showed human history. Wars, conflicts, revolutions, all the messy, violent, chaotic story of humanity's development. "My species has been fighting against tyranny for our entire history," Park explained. "We've overthrown kings, emperors, dictators, and anyone else who tried to hold absolute power. It's not in our nature to accept permanent rulers, even when we're the ones doing the ruling." She paused and looked around the hall. "Besides, we've seen what happens to species that try to control the galaxy. They become soft, complacent, and eventually they're overthrown by someone hungrier and more desperate. We have no interest in following that path." The debate continued for hours. Some species were eager to join the new alliance. Others remained suspicious. A few argued for complete isolation. But gradually, consensus began to emerge. The galaxy needed some kind of organization to prevent another council from arising. And despite their concerns about human power, most species had to admit that humanity had proven itself to be different from the council in crucial ways. "If we agree to this compact," said the representative from the Helix Federation, "what guarantees do we have that it will actually work?" Major Kwon Dong-min stepped forward. He had been leading the teams that liberated council facilities, and his reputation had spread across the galaxy. "Let me tell you about the guarantees," he said. 3 days ago, my teams raided the last known council stronghold in the Omega sector. We found something interesting. The display changed to show a massive space station hidden in an asteroid field. This was the council's contingency plan. If they ever lost control of the galaxy, they intended to release a biological weapon that would destroy all non-council species. Complete galactic genocide. The hall erupted in shocked gasps and angry voices. "We destroyed the weapon in the station," Quan continued, when the noise died down. "But here's the important part. We also rescued the council scientists who were working on it." "What did you do with them?" asked a delegate. "We offered them a choice. They could face trial for genocide, or they could help us build defenses against similar weapons. Most of them chose to help." Dr. Choi nodded. "Those council scientists are now working in multi-species research teams, developing technologies to protect the galaxy from biological and chemical weapons. They're not prisoners, they're colleagues." "Why?" demanded another delegate. "They helped commit genocide. Why show them mercy?" "Because," Park said quietly, "someone has to break the cycle." She gestured to the mixed crews visible on the fleet transmissions. The council ruled through fear and domination. They turned species against each other, kept them isolated and suspicious. If we want to build something better, we have to start by proving that cooperation works better than conquest. The debate stretched into the evening, but slowly, one by one, species began signing the compact. Not all of them. Some chose to remain neutral observers, and a few opted for complete isolation. But enough signed to create a real alliance. As the ceremony concluded, Park found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a trap designed to destroy humanity. Instead, it had led to the creation of something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly cooperative civilization. Captain Daeho appeared on the communication channel one final time. "To all species, whether you've joined the compact or not, know this. The Free Species Protection Force will respond to any call for help, from any civilization, anywhere in the galaxy. You don't have to be our allies for us to defend you, and if someone tries to become the next council," asked a delegate, "then they'll discover what the council learned." Daeho replied with a smile that held no humor. "Humans are very good at hunting predators." 1 year later, Dr. Choi Min-ji stood in a very different kind of laboratory. Instead of the sterile, council processing facilities, this one was bright and welcoming, filled with researchers from 30 different species working together on projects to benefit everyone. Through the window, she could see the rescue ships returning from another successful mission. A previously unknown species had been discovered on the edge of the galaxy, and first contact teams were already establishing friendly relations. Dr. Choi called her research partner, a former council scientist who had chosen cooperation over trial. "The quantum communication array is ready for testing,"